Okay, the time is now 7 o'clock, and it's time for a public hearing on our consolidated annual performance and evaluation report. Mary, you're here with us. If you'd like to come on up to the podium and give us an overview, and then we'll seek any public comment.
Okay, thank you. So, the Borough of Carlisle annually receives community development block grant funds from the basically HUD. And so, as part of the requirement, each year you are to submit what's called the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. We call it the CAPER. So, it's basically a summary of what you have accomplished. You know, anytime you receive grant money, you put a plan forward, HUD approves the plan, and then after you spend the money, you are to basically list out your accomplishments. And so that is what this is. And so it needs to go before the public for comment to see if there's any questions, any concerns. And then after this process, it goes to your board for approval, and then we submit it to HUD. So everything really with HUD remains a public process. The goal is always public process. so this is for your program year 2022. And 2022 begins July of 2022 and goes until June of 2023. So we are currently in our 2023 funding cycle, but this is in 2023 ended essentially your 2022 year, if that makes sense. So I'll go just through some of the basics. With CDBG, there are some programmatic requirements. The federal government wants you to spend their money. So they make it very evident that spending your money in a timely fashion is key to receiving more money, to not being penalized in the future. So when it comes to the Borough of Carlisle, so your unexpended funds may not total more than 1.5 times the current grant. So as the borough's ratio was 1.45, so you met that requirement. When it comes to their low to moderate income benefit, so for those who are not familiar with CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funds, the target is low to moderate income people. It is always the end user. So basically, the requirement is you have to serve at least 70% of your funds must go to serve those individuals. So the borough actually achieved a percentage of 99.54 on that perspective. So you served 99% of your funds went to serve low to moderate income people. When it comes to public service caps, so they cap certain things you can do with the funding. 15% of those funds may be expended for public service. That's the maximum. You actually were at 13.49. So again, met the requirement. We're under it, well within the range. And again, no more than 20% of those can be spent on planning or administration. The borough only spent 15%. So again, you've met every requirement. And just some things to note, most of your funds are spent on some really significant programs. One that we find very beneficial that you may not know about or may know a little bit about is the owner occupied rehab program. That is probably one of the most successful programs we run at the county level and at the borough level. That is a program that helps a homeowner who may have a code violation. Essentially, they come to the redevelopment authority and they will get a deferred loan. They pay nothing. It goes on a last lien position on their mortgage and allows them to repair some significant issues so they can remain in their home. The goal is always to have somebody remain in their home in a safe and healthy manner. So the borough actually assisted 4 households in program year 2022, and that was $35,784.15 was expended. So you were able to keep 4 homeowners in their home in safe condition. And then another great program is code enforcement. So the borough actually spent a little over $68,000 to assist with code enforcement, which again, they work hand in hand. You enforce the code so you can make sure a person is in a safe, healthy place, and then you are offering the assistance to help them remedy the situation. So some other major accomplishments: you assisted 2 businesses with your shop steady loan, and then again, you assisted Hope Station, the Employment Skills Center with training programs, and again provided some public facilities with some infrastructure funds. So there were some improvements on North Hanover, some rehab over at Hope Station, lighting at Latour Park, a stormwater project, and again some work at Linear Park. So the borough has spent their funding in the way that they said. You have your plan, you've spent your money in the way HUD required, and you've also followed what your plan said. So I'll take any questions if you have them, but the borough has done a wonderful job laying out programs that meet what you originally said to HUD you were going to do.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any questions or comments from council? Okay. Nothing online. Any questions or comments from the public here in Borough Hall? Okay. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good evening. So that concludes that public hearing. It is adjourned. We're going to roll right into the regular meeting of council, and we will begin with the moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance by Council Perry.
So I am sure that many of you have heard about the flooding that's happening in Libya and also the earthquake in Morocco. A lot of lives were lost, thousands of lives were lost. And I think this is a moment for us to really reflect. We've seen the changes in our climate and what's happening in this country and other countries. And I just want us to take some time to really think about the people who have lost their lives, the things that are happening as far as our climate and our role in it and what we need to do to make things better. So. Okay, and now the pledge.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, the roll, please.
Mr. Crampsey?
Here.
Mr. Hicks?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Landis? Ms. Mellon?
Here.
Ms. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Stubbe?
Here.
Mayor Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Powers?
Here.
Next is opportunity for citizens to be heard. So if there's anybody who would like to speak to council on any issue concerning borough government, now is the opportunity. Is there anybody here in Borough Hall who wishes to do so? I see none. Do we have anybody by Zoom? No? Okay. We'll move right on then. We have a presentation from Smith Elliott Kearns on our annual audit. So Tina, if you'd like to come forward to the podium.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This evening, I'm just going to take a few minutes of your time to talk about the results of the audit for 2022 and just provide a couple high-level comments as far as what you can expect to see with your audit package and variances, some big variances from prior year to current year, the reason for them, look at some graph information, and then just conclude on that. So what you should be able to see is the presentation that I'm going to go through tonight. And in slide format, you'll see it'll mention excerpts from the financial statements. So when you look at your financial packet, obviously it's much thicker than what I'm going to go over tonight. And that is on purpose. Obviously, we work very closely with management and have a lot of conversations with them, discussions, exit conferences, go in much more detail with them about the results and everything. So what you're going to be hearing tonight is just the ultimate final results and then just a couple little comments about some of the audit procedures that we did and what we found. So in your financial packet that you'll have is the financial statements, which are the big bound final, your which includes, in your case, the ACFR, that you kind of go that step above and beyond the regular financial statements, and you provide a lot of additional information that gets you the certification that you receive every year, basically just acknowledging that you provided everything you needed to provide in that packet. And there is a lot of effort that goes into that on management's end to provide us the information in addition to what we already audit with the basic financial statements. So you'll have that, and then the letters. The management letter is the letter that if we would find any kind of suggestions or recommendations to implement something, change something, best practices, anything, any standards that are coming down the line that are going to affect you, we include in that letter with a synopsis of what the standard is, how it will affect you, and just the caveat that we'll work with management when it comes time to implement that. Also in the management letter are all the graphs. Some of them we'll go over tonight, but it gives you a little bit better visual picture of your results, and it also includes the last 5 years. So it gives you a little bit more of a trend analysis to look at as opposed to your financial statements, which would be 1 year for the most part. The communication letter is just what we call the everything else. All the other required communications we have to have with the board. If there were anything else that we needed to communicate as far as disagreements with management, difficulties in performing the audit, anything like that would be in that letter. If there were none, it's just the required communication that we need to have, which is what is in that letter. The other thing that's in that letter is we always provide you a list of the journal entries that were made from the time we get your initial numbers to what you see in the audited financial statements. Some of those entries are provided by management just based on the timing of when we're asking for information and when information is available internally to provide it. Some of it is through audit adjustments. Some of it is just strictly aligning your internal records for external reporting. So they are all there attached for informational purposes. In summary, you have an unmodified audit opinion. So as a reminder, that's the best opinion you can have. It's the goal of an audit. It means that there wasn't anything we found in performing our audit procedures that required us to modify the opinion. So that's always the good thumbs up, seal of approval for the audit, what you want to hear. There were no findings. That's also what you want to hear. Not that findings are always bad. Sometimes it's just, you have a lot of new grants that you're implementing and using funding for. Sometimes you don't get the greatest communication from other governmental entities on how to use that funding and requirements. So sometimes those findings creep up, but you didn't have anything that required reporting in regards to findings. As far as just the funds itself, all except for the highway aid and the solid waste fund had positive changes, so meaning your revenues exceeded your expenses. And the single audit that was performed was because of all the federal funding you received. We'll see in a couple slides. You had a significant increase in your intergovernmental revenues, mainly because you utilized a significant portion of the ARPA funds that you received. So that is what, not in and of itself, because you still have some road projects, the CDBG funds, other federal grants that you're expending, but the ARPA funds really kicked in for the requirement for a single audit this year. So as part of the audit here, the independent auditor's report, which is what's at the beginning of the basic financial statements, the unmodified opinion means that everything was materially correct. Obviously, in the grand scheme of an audit, we do not look at 100% of the transactions. It's just not feasible from a time and money standpoint to do that. So there are lots of calculations we go through to determine what we're going to test, what questions we're going to ask. So the audit opinion is saying that based on what's presented in the financial statements, we believe that everything is materially correct and in the right spots. It is not an opinion on internal controls. It is not an opinion on a fraud investigation. We always just remind you of that fact because a lot of people, more so the public who isn't as versed with audits, they don't truly understand what an audit, a financial audit is. So it's just the reminder that it's not because we didn't come in because there was some kind of concern or issue. It's just your normal financial audit that you have every year. Management's discussion and analysis. This is also part of your financial document. It is an unaudited piece. It is prepared by management. We are not allowed to prepare it. It's prepared by management and we review it to make sure there's no inconsistencies with what's reported with the rest of the financial statements. But it gives what we call a much more plain English discussion on what happened in the borough, what's expected to happen in the future, why things are happening. It's management's place to be able to provide useful information to the reader of the financial statements that would otherwise potentially be confusing with the terminology that's required for the standards that have to be followed and the disclosures in your financials. So here we're looking at the general fund analysis. So what you have is the 2021 actual compared to the 2022 actual, and then compared to the 2022 final budget. So you can see the variance from prior year to current year, prior year meaning 2021, current year meaning 2022, and then the variance with budget. The main takeaways here, obviously in the revenue area, from a tax standpoint, from an actual comparison, you had an increase in virtually all of your tax sources. So, not just your real estate taxes, but your earned income, your transfer taxes, all of those taxes saw an increase in the actual compared to prior year, and also higher than what you had essentially budgeted. A lot of times with revenues, you budget somewhat conservatively because you don't have control over the revenues and how much you get in. There's some volatility involved in that. So you were able to essentially bring in more than you expected from a tax standpoint. The intergovernmental, here's one of the places in the presentation here where you could see the significant jump from prior year and from budget. This is utilizing the ARPA funds. In 2022, you charged $3 million of your total ARPA allocation to be expended during the year. So that is the main jump there. Expenditure wise, mainly increases normal salaries and benefits. You did have a significant cost for your consulting services that you paid for in 2022. So that was one of the jumps from prior year to current year. But you can see at the bottom, you had positive changes in fund balance in the general fund the last 2 years from what you were expecting. So that's obviously a good thing. Fund balance in general, you can see your general fund, you have different components of fund balance. For general fund, the non-spendable is essentially what you've already utilized, if you will, in inventories, prepaid activity, and you have some restricted fund balance. And then committed and assigned are more of the internal designations where you're trying to set aside funds to utilize for future specified purposes, and then everything else is unassigned and can be used for whatever needs necessary for the borough. So you can see your percentage of unassigned is healthy there as far as you have some reserves that are not earmarked for anything else specifically that you can use as needed. Your other governmental funds, your capital projects, highway aid, asset forfeiture, they all have external restrictions, which means you're very limited with what you can spend those funds on. Proprietary fund, this is all your service funds, essentially where you're charging a service here or charging a fee for a service. So this is just the revenue and expense side of it, but you can see for all of your related funds, except for the solid waste, you had the positive change in that position. Your solid waste, you did have a use of reserves. You also had a use of reserves last year in 2021. And this year, with your negative change, your net position swung into a small deficit balance. You did you were at seeing that trend happen as you were using your reserves, and you actually did already agree to have a new, basically a new solid waste program put in place for 2023 to help alleviate that deficit and kind of bring those reserves back up. So just wanted to point that out, that that was the only proprietary fund that did see a loss in 2022. And in 2021, all but that fund had a profit as well. Now we're going to just take a couple seconds to look at some of the footnotes in your financial statements. Note 7 is your pension plan. The note itself is about 4 pages long. This is just one slide on it, but we just want to point out that how well funded your pension plans are. They're not as well funded as they were in 2021. In 2021, they both were slightly over 100% funded, but so they did dip down, but it was kind of a unique year for investments with seeing some losses. So you're still at a healthy funded percentage, but it is a little bit less than the prior year. As far as your statistical section, this is a section in the back of your ACFR. This is a slide from that just showing your debt margin. So you can see over the past 10 years, essentially, in 5-year increments, your debt limit and the amount of debt that's applicable to that limit, and then the percentage of that. So it has been increasing. You do have a decent amount of debt, but currently you're in no unfair position to pay that off. It's just the function of the projects you have going on that are needed in the borough to maintain your infrastructure and everything else that you have going on. Your single audit. In total, you charged $5.5 million of federal expenditures across your federal programs. $3 million of that was for your ARPA funds, the ARPA program, which is the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. There was a little over $1 million, I believe, that was charged to the Tiger Grant for your road project, and then the CDBG funds are also federal funds that are part of that $5.5 million. And as I mentioned, there were no findings reported. This is the management letter. I mentioned it's a summary of any new standards or if there's any recommendations for improvements, which there were none of those this year, and then the graphs are in that letter. So looking at some of the graphs, your cash and investments across your different funds. The general fund spiked the last couple of years were the ARPA funds being received. So they were split into 2 payments across 2 different years. So that's why the 2021 jump, and then 2022, you had a little bit of a decrease overall, but it was basically just because of using the funds. Revenue comparison, you can see the spike there in your intergovernmental for 2022. That is using those ARPA funds. The spike in sewer for 2019 was mainly related to significant tap fees that you had that year, as well as significant investment earnings that you received. And obviously, we know in 2020, kind of the world stopped for a little while. Investments really weren't earning a lot for a couple of years. They have now started to rebound again fairly well, but that was kind of the drop down and remaining steady for a couple of years. Expense wise, nothing too significant. Public safety obviously has been increasing, which is normal just with the cost of everything. You did have increase in your fire and your code enforcement area for the most part, but overall nothing too earth shattering there. Your change in fund balance and net position. So again, across your different major funds that you have, obviously capital projects is normally the most volatile because you usually save for a project and then you do the project and it comes back down. So that's not unexpected to see that back and forth with capital projects, and then everything else essentially is just dependent on what you have going on in those funds each year. This is what I mentioned about the communication letter. It's just a little bit more of a narrative of what is included in that letter. It includes the first page basically is just a summary of your significant accounting estimates and disclosures. The adjustments are attached to that letter, and there was nothing in that letter, nothing that happened in the audit that required us to adjust the terminology in that letter this year. So in summary, the unmodified audit opinion, so the thumbs up, good audit opinion there, the goal of the audit. No findings, a positive year for the borough, for the most part, except for the Highway 8 and solid waste, and a single audit that was required because of the federal awards you expended, which even though you're utilizing significantly the ARPA funds, you still do have the significant transportation grant that you have, and then CDBG is always something that you're utilizing each year. So the potential for the requirement of a single audit is pretty high for the borough for the foreseeable future. It just depends on what program is tested based on what expenditures you have each year. Any questions on the presentation? Anything I spoke about? Anything I didn't speak about but you have a question on, want to talk through?
Hey, does council have any questions? No? Richard, would you like to do a victory lap for your team? Any questions from the public? Okay. Thank you, Tina. We appreciate it.
All right. If any questions come up afterward, just funnel them through Richard and we'll get you an answer. All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. Next is the consent agenda. So that's a list of routine items that do not appear to be controversial in nature and probably do not require additional discussion. They can be acted on in one motion in their current form. If discussion is desired on any particular item, any member of council or the public may request the item be removed from the consent agenda, and that item will be considered separately. Is there any such request? Okay, then I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
A motion by Councilor Mellon to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Stubbe. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. And the consent agenda has passed. Next, there are no table continued recurring items. There are no reports from elected officials. So we'll move right on to reports from committees, budget and finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 4 items this evening. First, I move that Borough Council approve the 2024 minimum municipal obligation budgets in the amount of $681,128 to fund the police, non-uniform employees, and 401A pension plans for 2024 as required by Act 205 of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Motion by Councilor Stubbe to approve the MMO. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Crampsey. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Next, I move that Borough Council adopt an ordinance amending the code of the Borough of Carlisle to establish rates for the borough's electric vehicle charging stations.
Motion by Councilor Stubbe to approve the ordinance establishing rates for electric vehicle charging stations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Crampsey. Any discussion on this item? Okay, and this is a roll call vote. Please, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Crampsey,
Aye.
Mr. Hicks,
Aye.
Ms. Mellon,
Aye.
Ms. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Stubbe,
Aye.
Mayor Schultz.
Aye. Motion passes.
Next, I move that Borough Council consider approving a contract for janitorial services with DSC Solutions LLC for 1 year effective January 1st, 2024.
Motion to approve the contract for janitorial services. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Crampsey. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
And finally, this evening, I move that Borough Council approve a quote from Butts Ticket Solutions for an amount not to exceed $470,000 for parking kiosks through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's Cooperative Purchasing Co-Stars program, pending review and approval by the Borough Solicitor.
Motion by Councilor Stubbe to approve the quote for parking kiosks. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Crampsey. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
And that concludes the Budget and Finance Committee report for this evening.
Thank you. Sustainability and Community Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one item tonight, follow-up from our public hearing just a few minutes ago. But I move that Council approve the Borough of Carlisle's Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, known as CAPER, a requirement of the Community Development block grant program for the period covering July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
Councilor Hicks makes a motion to approve the annual caper. Is there a second? We don't have the deputy
Second.
mayor tonight. Councilor Stubbe makes the second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion passes.
And that concludes my report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two items tonight. First, I'll make a motion that Borough Council may enact an ordinance to enter into an agreement by and between the Downtown Carlisle Association, DCA, and the Borough of Carlisle, retroactive to January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Councilor Cramsey makes a motion to approve the ordinance to approve the agreement with DCA. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Perry. Any discussion? And this is another roll call. Mr. Secretary, please.
Mr. Cramsey,
Aye.
Mr. Hicks,
Aye.
Ms. Mellon,
Aye.
Ms. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Stubbe,
Aye.
Mayor Schultz.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. My second item, I'll make a motion that Borough Council may approve the subordination agreement for the property located at 614 and 16 North Pitt Street, subject to the Borough Solicitor's satisfactory review and approval in compliance with the Community Development Block Grant Program's requirements.
Motion by Councilor Cramsey to approve the subordination agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Perry. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion passes.
That ends my report.
Okay. Employee Relations Citizen Participation.
I will take that. So I move that council approve the revisions to the Carlisle Borough Civil Service Commission rules and regulations.
Councilor Mellon makes a motion to approve the revisions to the Civil Service Rules and Regulations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hicks. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you for your report. Public safety. I move that council authorize the closure of the first block of West Pomfret Street from South Hanover Street to the Pomfret Street parking garage on September 23rd, 2023 from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. for a day of different cultures coming together to represent their country's flag. The approval would be contingent upon the receipt of a valid certificate of insurance naming the Borough of Carlisle as an additional insured and the applicant reimbursing the Borough 100% of the variable costs and 10% of the fixed cost associated with this event. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Councilor Hicks. Any discussion? Other than that, I know Brian Landers is very excited about this. So hope along with Harvest of the Arts that day, we'll have a lot of activity. So hopefully we can get around a little bit. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion passes. That concludes my report. Public Works.
I have a few items on my report tonight. The first one is I move that council adopt a resolution providing for a continuation of the temporary lift on parking limitations at all times along the west side of Fairground Avenue from West Penn Street north to the railroad crossing. This action shall be for a trial period of not more than 90 days.
Council Perry makes a motion to adopt a resolution providing continuation of temporary lift on parking limitations for a trial period. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Stubbe. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
For my next item, I move that council award the Ridge Street Pumping Station Parallel Force Main installation contract to the lowest responsive bidder, EK Services Incorporated of New Cumberland, PA, for the lump sum amount of $1,198,882.32, pending a receipt of the required bonds and insurances for the project.
Councilor Perry makes a motion to award the Ridge Street Pumping Station Parallel Force Main installation contract. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Stubbe. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
And under that, and I don't know if this should have, if we should have done this before we did the vote or not. No, I don't think so. There's not another number on it, so I think it's in addition to it. So is it a separate one?
Would you? I think you could amend your motion to add that? Would you like to?
Okay, so I'd like to amend the motion to add that council also authorize any contract change order needing prompt action in an amount not to exceed $10,000 each to be approved at the discretion of the borough manager and brought before council for retroactive approval.
Councilor Stubbe, do you consider that a friendly amendment?
I'm good with that.
Okay. We didn't get to the nays yet, so the vote wasn't concluded. So I'll call the question again. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion passes.
And for my last item, I I move that council authorize the mayor to sign the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Sewage Facilities Planning Module Exemption Form for a connection to the borough's sanitary sewer system from the proposed Cumberland Shared Ride Facility land development.
Councilor Perry makes a motion for the authorization of signature of the planning module exemption. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Stubbe. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes.
And that concludes my report for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Now, new business. This is another opportunity for anybody who would still like to make public comment and didn't think of it earlier. You have another bite at the apple. Is there anybody here? Go ahead. Yes, sir. Come to the podium. We'll need your name and address.
I'm presenting this. James Evans, 157 B Street. You guys are pretty familiar with me. I wanted to first off thank you guys for putting up the speed stuff on B Street to monitor that. Those signs actually we did see a slowdown of folks. Of course, they got taken down and things kind of increased again. But thanks for putting those out there and collecting the data. Hopefully, you got some good data from it. And if there's anything else we can provide, we'll provide it to you guys. And I know you're working with some of the neighbors on the project and certain things of issues that they have raised. The only thing that I just wanted to see if there was any feedback on the concrete for the sidewalks with the spalling and what the maybe resolution is going to be for that. And also just to raise the issue is with the future projects like with Hanover where the new roundabout and the realignment with Spring Road is going, is maybe also some of the things that have been found in the B Street connectivity project that you guys take those into consideration going forward. So that we don't have the same potential issues arising because they're using highway concrete for sidewalks, things of that nature. And then the last thing that I'll raise, I know you're doing the temporary parking there on Fairground.
Right.
I would be going down that road sometimes. There's people that jut out or just pull out, and I know they're using the skate park and stuff. But when the construction, I'm not sure when the 90 days will expire and if the permits have been approved yet for the project. I'd be careful of that because sometimes people just pull out, and with the narrow bit, there's a potential for an accident there with not to say people don't park there, but once that starts to heat up in that area, you're going to probably have a lot of people cutting around. So just an observation. But thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Any other comment? And still nothing by Zoom. Okay. Then reports from council members and staff. Mr. Powers.
No new business today.
You're gonna keep us on this roll. No?
Yeah, I won't make Owen upset. Okay.
Okay. All right. Councilor Hicks. Councilor Perry.
I actually do. I know that there's a lot of things that are happening next Saturday, but Hope Station is going to be hosting it's an ice cream social, back to school bash, whatever you want to call it. It is being sponsored by Giant and UPMC. So Giant will be there. They will have limited amount of backpacks or school supplies. I'm not exactly sure what they're bringing. So if you want some ice cream, after you leave Harvest of the Arts and after you leave being helped up Pomfret Street with the flags and everything, if you want, please feel free just to come by. Even if you just come by to say hi, we'd love to see you. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong, do you have anything for us?
I would just like to remind the public to take advantage of the short survey that we have online through Engage Carlisle on some of our zoning reform concepts that we are looking into, and one that seems to pique a lot of residents' interest is the former Frog Switch site that staff is recommending for potential rezoning from general industrial district to urban mixed use. So I think I can speak for Jared Woolston, who's not here this evening. Both he and I were exchanging texts late last evening. We were watching the survey, and it was amazing to see how many individuals have already taken advantage of. There you go, 272.
For those who couldn't hear, 272. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. It's your last chance. I mean tonight, not ever. Please come back next month. All right, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.